the gap analysis that we've been doing since we got here.
And will Procore, Joe, help y'all if like water tie-ins are being delayed? So
Absolutely, they help us with everything. I mean, sewer and water board's deep into that platform right now, and we're excited about joining them with Procore. And I think the industry's excited about it too, because most of the construction companies use that on other projects within the state.
thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Harris.
Thank you. And listen, thank you to your teams for walking with me and the neighbors around the existing projects. As we get updates or you get updates and we need to walk through again, for example, Central City first, which is being delayed on the sidewalks. Let me know, because we'll be out there and we'll be walking them with you if you need that additional pressure. We have seen progress, and thank you for the handicap sidewalk progress in Central City Group B. Fleming and their sub has done good work, but I did want to touch upon the sidewalk tiles there, which I talked to you about. I know you're not supposed to talk to the people to get information, but there were some sidewalk tiles that were excavated and then stolen.
Yes.
Specifically on Washington and Barone. And it looks like they picked up thereafter some of the tiles. So just explain to the public about the tiles and what is done if tiles are stolen, broken, et cetera, during construction.
Yeah, I mean, the contractor, has to do everything that they can do to preserve those street name tiles. So when they're removed, it's the responsibility of the contractor to take them and store them until it's time to reset them. We have had some issues, as you mentioned, on the Central City project. After we spoke, I did speak with our historic preservationists, and immediately, I believe Dr. Soleil brought in the contractor, the subcontractor, just to make sure that everybody was on the same page about the process that needs to be followed. And I'm told there have been improvements since that time, but it's just something we have to continue to re-emphasize with our contractors, just how important it is to preserve them when they can and to properly store them when they've been removed.
And then talk to me about any penalties that are assessed if you have to go out and buy new tiles.
Yes, there are. I actually, I can send you the information about that. We have some new stringent penalties, but I don't know them offhand.
Okay, I think,
but I will get them to you.
There's a fine, I think.
There is a fine, absolutely. I just can't remember what it is.
I just see your team nodding their heads and behind you.
Right, and Councilmember
Dr.
Harris,
Soleil might be able to tell.
Councilmember Harris, I think too that as part of the JIRR program and our agreement, consultation agreement with FEMA and all the different SHPO and everybody else, we were allowed to bring an in-house archaeologist and historical preservation staff into City Hall for that program. It is a requirement by FEMA for us to support, protect, and remove and replace those street tiles, and the responsibility of the construction companies also. So I urge any residents to see any broken street tiles removed, stolen, whatever, during construction, and let us know so we can get Philip out, our historical preservation staff member, to take a look at it, get with the construction company so we can fix it.
Great, and I'll post that on social media so people know. I have some specific questions about projects. I'll try to run through them quickly. For the Marleyville neighborhood, we're getting complaints about trash not being picked up because of construction.
Okay.
And there seems to be confusion about where people need to place their trash. And so what have you been doing to coordinate with Department of Sanitation to ensure trash pickup issues are resolved?
Yeah, I mean, we work very closely with Matt Torrey and the Department of Sanitation, particularly on full reconstruction blocks, to make sure that he's aware so that he can alert, the contractors in those areas. I will say on full reconstruction blocks, if people need assistance with bringing their carts to the corners, they can call Roadwork NOLA 504-658-7623 road. They can send an email to roadwork@nola.gov. And then Nikki Polk, the director of Roadwork NOLA, will coordinate, with the outreach specialist to ensure that that happens with the contractor.
And usually when we find out about contractor debris on the site, I mean, residents, I get it from the council folks, if you just let us know. I've got 2 staff members from Project Delivery Unit working with DPW that immediately go out to those sites and take pictures, and then we come back and get with the construction companies to go out. I have been pressing with all the companies about the quality of work and the quality of neighborhoods once they leave. And I stress that they shouldn't leave debris. So I'd like to know when that happens.
And I think we have a citizen here who is going to come up and talk about debris. Can you talk to me about sweeps of closed streets? For example, notification to citizens who might have their full reconstruction and what notification is going on.
So they should be getting a notification every 30 days. I think we know that that has not been happening as it's supposed to. But anytime, a street's under construction, they should be getting a notice every 30 days that sort of gives an update on what's happening on that block, reminds them about trash pickup and being supported in that regard, flushing of the lines, just sort of any of the things that they can anticipate seeing in the next 30 days.
What are you doing to ensure that this actually happens?
So we have adjusted our contract language specifically. So the contracts that are starting under the new task order format that have some specific language about notifications, when they need to happen, and what the penalty is if they don't. And so if notifications aren't happening as they're supposed to, it can result in a stop work order. The important thing to know about that is that when there's a stop work order, their contract time keeps running.
Right. No, I know that. But again, I think it's important to know that a lot of these projects are going on in places where people might not have technology, internet access. So, road work is going.
The canvassing is so important.
Yeah.
One other thing I'll mention, and I think I might have mentioned this before, but Nikki and her team have been working with workforce development to try to use bring on some younger teens to be able to help with canvassing on the weekends and some of the projects that have been really more challenging and where notifications have been a major issue. So that's something that is in process now.
Yeah, I think the Office of Youth Gun Violence has a program where they're trying to place people. And I think that would be a great place for folks to start to get their toes into what DPW does and then go from there.
I agree with you. I think, we would love to have the capacity to be able to do our own canvassing, but it's just been very challenging to keep up with all the projects.
Okay, on that note, we're still receiving complaints of water shutoffs occurring, especially in mid-city, without people receiving notifications. Is it the same issue of lack of firing? What is going on? Is it Sewer and Water Board's job to notify people? What's going on?
Roadwork NOLA handles the notifications for these. There's a process that's in place. And if that process is followed, then businesses are given sufficient notification. I mean, the Roadwork NOLA's process is that we don't just tell businesses we're shutting off water. We coordinate with them, especially schools, special customers, medical facilities. We want to coordinate with them to find an ideal time to do the outage. Unfortunately, there have been some times where the coordination, with Sewage and Water Board has not been where it needs to be. We're working on that. We're trying to improve it. That's really what I can say.
What's the status of the Camp Bowell area in Mid-City?
I drove by there this morning. I saw 2 dump trucks. I think they are pouring asphalt, I think, on Conti.
Okay.
Right there. There's definitely progress happening. I did hear of an instance yesterday where one of the businesses, their access was taken away without notification. Nikki and the roadwork team were on top of it and the contractor gave them access back right away. So we're continuing to work with them as best we can until we get the work done in that area.
Okay. Just moving quickly through this. Streetlights impacted by these projects. I've asked this question before about prioritization or making sure that streetlights can be repaired. Especially on the closed off streets. So is that something that y'all are working through?
Yeah, it's something we're working through. It's something that we're tracking. Obviously they've got to be able to get equipment in there. So you look at a block like, I think Vincennes is one of the ones where it's completely torn up. So obviously getting the equipment in there to be able to address them is not possible right now, but it will be addressed.
And I asked this previously, I think when Josh was here, making sure that streetlights on those side streets that people have to park on.
Yes.
Are you guys prioritizing those repairs on those side streets where people are forced to park because there's construction going on their entire block?
We absolutely should be, but please let me know if there are areas where you're hearing that this is not happening, and I will make sure it is.
Okay, Sarah, I will.
And council member, I
Yes,
think
sir.
too, another thing I've noticed just being out in the field is that some streets are not closed, but they're not trafficable. you cannot get down those
Right.
streets. I mean, with the four-wheel Humvee, whatever. So, I'm working hard with the construction company to make sure when those streets are like that, that's why we're going to Plum Orchard up tomorrow.
Okay.
I drove out there day before and no way I was going to get my vehicle down that road. So I'm going back out to meet the contractors out there. I can understand the street. If it's not closed, you should be able to drive on this street.
Yeah, Joe, listen, we were supposed to go to bingo and meatloaf yesterday at a community center that is completely an island because the
Mhm.
streets are all torn up around it. So
Where's that?
we'll get the address exactly for you. It's run by some nuns. So we need to get over there and take a look at it. Finally, I want to talk about tech. I think it's great to get this asset management system up and running. Currently, I know that there's a website where people can plug in their address, but the information is not always accurate. I plugged in my own address to get information about the sidewalks, and it was like started in 2022 it wasn't. That the information wasn't accurate. So I just want to make sure that there's updated information. I know you guys do 2-week look aheads.
Yeah, it is updated regularly. Obviously, no system is perfect. So I'm sure that there are instances when we find information that's outdated. I will tell you that the timeframes are
Long.
specific to the project.
Yeah.
So that's
Not the
probably what you're
streets.
seeing.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's the issue is
Yeah.
that a project is one thing, but again, to Councilmember Thomas's point, all politics are local. So I want to be able to plug in my address to know what is the exact.
I think
timeframe.
as we get out of these wave 1 and 2 projects, we're all tired of talking about
Yeah.
and get into the task order ones where they're working on it. We're going to be able to get more specific about the information that's out there.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Green.
I'd like to first thank you all for the work that you do, and I'm glad that I come in contact with you all. Like just yesterday, I saw you at Norman Francis at the end of the bayou, helping the Flood Protection Authority East drain Bayou St. John. I learned something myself. So
Me too.
thank you. Thank you for that work. I do want to emphasize, because sometimes it's helpful to be redundant, communications. Yesterday evening, I went to the Gardena pre-construction meeting.
I heard. Thank you for attending.
I try to attend as many as I can if there's not another community meeting. I also heard the contractor and the neighborhood engagement representatives, who I was pleased were there, emphasized that if there were changes, they were going to get in contact with the customers. Now, Gardena is one street, so it should be easy. I just want to emphasize sometimes the technology related way to get in contact with people, and that's flyers.
Yep.
There are no more than 75 houses from Paris Avenue to St. Bernard, and that flyer goes a long way, even if it's to give another 30 days or something. But if there is going to be a change and driveways are blocked where it wasn't expected, yes, there are people who've lived in their houses for 50 years and they don't have the technology that's sometimes available. I just want to emphasize that and just tell you that that's so very important in terms of communications. On a positive note, I'm going to have a video on my newsletter yesterday. I was at North Prier and on Zaga Street. And some of the people who were in that video were so pleased because they said they've lived on North Prier Street for 40 years and they've never seen street work. So the fact is that their street is being done with overlay, the curbs are being taken care of, the underground situations have been addressed. So they're very pleased. I love to see that throughout the city. And so I just encourage you all to work with us to let us know how we can help to keep this sort of construction going. I recognize that on the other hand, that there are problems such as in the 6300 block of Music Street, where for some reason that work has seemingly stopped, and when it rains, it gets flooded. You all have responded in a favorable manner in that respect. But just keep in mind that a lot of people in the midst of the challenging times are pleased to see something positive going on, and the more street work that we can get completed, the better. And then my last point is that I like to see this because I'm going to share this in terms of what jobs are going to be finished by the end of 22. I wouldn't mind if you gave us an update as to the same look of what jobs are going to be finished in 23, because I know that most of them that are going on now are going to be finished then.
Okay.
And it just helps everyone to feel that when they don't see, for example, Port Street on here, or some other streets that are going on right now, that it's not that they're not being thought about, that 2023 is going to be a good time. That's a good lead for us as I share this information on Nextdoor in our newsletter and the like.
Okay.
Yeah, and Councilmember Green, I think that, that's part of my strategy of just being in the field. Number one is to teach as I mature the staff within DPW, the project managers, show them how they should be out there on site all the time, interfacing with the residents, because if they're out there all the time, we might not need the flyers or anything else. And I want to get out there more. We're rotating to some of these sites in wave 1 and 2 every 30 days. But as we get a handle on that and start finishing up those neighborhoods, we'll move to those bond projects. But it's my intent, as long as I'm in this position, I have the project managers on every construction site when they're out there in the field.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember King.
Morning.
Good morning,
Morning.
Councilmember King.
First of all, thank you all for coming out, Ms. Robles, especially for coming out to the District C East Bank Community Meeting maybe 2 weeks ago. And she did a great job. She also spoke about 900 and 1000 Cloyd Street. But so for the people who weren't there who are now listening, can you give us an update on that project?
I have to, what I know is there have been a lot of delays, I think, due to water line tie-ins. I don't really know much beyond that, but I can certainly get that for you.
Okay, all right. And secondly, get a lot of calls and concerns about bond funding projects in Algiers, mainly the failed streets in the older rural areas like Westchester and Stratford and Fairfax, Kingston, all those streets on the cutoff side of Woodland. So is there any idea when those streets will even start to see repairs? Like Berkeley Drive going towards the cutoff?
Yeah, I believe I sent you a list, I think, last night, and I think Berkeley was on there. I'm not sure about those other streets, but happy to sit down with you and meet with you and talk about what your priorities are.
All right. Give me 1 minute. I didn't see Berkeley. So it says like West Bank Group. So maybe explain to me. It doesn't say the streets, it says like West Bank Group.
Yeah, so the projects that have those titles where it's like West Bank Group A or B, those are the FEMA funded joint infrastructure projects. So I can send you the maps for those projects, which show
That-
all of the blocks that are included.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That's
No
all I have.
problem.
No other comments for council members. First of all, thank you. I got greater clarity from my budget chairman when we talked about the bond issue, and I want to thank that. And just to kind of maybe help the public understand was that no one wants to sell bonds in an unfavorable market where you lose the impact or you can't maximize those amount of bonds. Now, I don't know what they use. I don't know if they used unhedged or if they hedged for a shorter duration. I wasn't around 5 years ago when they did that, but 2022 was unprecedented losses in the bond market. And with unhedged bonds, it was about 15% loss. So that's not a good way to capitalize on bonds. So there's a lot of people in the public who are out there thinking, man, we approved these bonds. Where is it? Well, if they were unhedged, if we didn't capitalize or use shorter durations, which you use, especially when you buy, then the market is unfavorable now. But that doesn't stop us from identifying projects that don't minimize the amount of bonding capability, but also projects that we can do that can at least let the public know that their vote wasn't in vain and that some of these projects are moving forward because of their vote on the bonds.
Right.
Now, and I think we need to identify, because Councilmember Giarrusso is right. Look, a lot of what we need now is especially voter confidence and knowing that things that they did are things that were promised. They can see those efforts being labeled. Even in an unfavorable market, it doesn't stop us from doing signature projects. So
Yeah, I agree with you.
I think the other thing is streetlight repair. I talked to the administration some time ago, months ago, about an initiative called Light Up the East, especially given our demographic there, the topography there, the history of some neighborhoods there. So street repair is nice, and that's fine as you're street repair, but is it the right kind of lighting for that area? Several cities light up different communities different ways, depending on where that community is, depending on the natural lighting in that community, depending on what happens in those communities. So yeah, we want street lights, but if we can take a look at better lighting, especially given that particular community and neighborhood, I think we have an opportunity to do that. Okay. Also, we got new street lights from Crowder to Reed. Some of those lights are out now. Those other lights from the bottom of the high rise that intersects or meets the new lights right before you get to Crowder, or that turn at Morrison, let me say it in my ninth ward vernacular, they ain't never been on. So at some point, you know, how you do new lights, and then you have a new lighting contract, and the ones that ain't never been on still ain't on. So I think we can do a better job there. But also, before I get to a couple other items, I want to thank you guys. I mean, last week was unprecedented in terms of the number of activity, capital projects and movement that were happening in any one area, from Lincoln Beach to Reed to Lake Forest, to what happened at Joe Brown to the Chef, all in a single day. I think we planned it the right way. It created a lot of good energy on behalf of people. But the question now is, how do we continue to move that? I also want to credit my colleague, Councilmember Harris. I think you have taken my inconvenience and hardship comment to another level. And I think you've actually kind of honed down on how we can understand that people don't mind an inconvenience. But when an inconvenience turns into a hardship, they wish you never would have did the street. They wish you never would have did the project. And what I see in the presentation today, Councilmember, that's why I want to commend you. I think they're getting it because they're talking about incremental impact versus just releasing a project on an area and not being able to control it. So kudos to you, and kudos to Public Works and to Capital Projects for getting it. I think it shows that some of the conversations we're having around here are actually working. Now, the last question that I have is that certain capital projects that were stalled are affecting public safety, especially like Eastview.
We'll be out there tomorrow.
Okay. Not only was that work stopped or stalled, but it's dangerous.
Yeah.
You know, and at some point we have to deal with that so that there's not a danger. A child shouldn't be able to get lost in a 4-foot crater in a street that was dug up that wasn't finished. Someone shouldn't have to worry about stepping 6 inches or 4 inches off the edge of their sidewalk and going into potentially a hole that could cost them their life or debilitate them. Thank you guys for going out for that. But I think there needs to be some type of solution there because it's a more dangerous situation than just not the streets being fixed or the holes being infilled.
Right, it's dangerous. I went out yesterday. It will be out tomorrow.
Okay. And
get some movement on that.
And in another effort, why don't we have more contractors bidding on our work? As we look at surrounding communities, they don't seem to have as big a problem as us getting people to compete for work, getting paid for work, and getting work done. Now, I understand the work stoppage because what's happening in Severn and over in Jefferson Parish. I think one of the same contractors that works for us now, that project may wind up being 18 months behind, but it seems to happen more often here. What's the problem with getting more people to want to make money here?
Well, we've got a Councilmember Thomas. I think it's several issues. One issue is we've got about anywhere from 11 to 13 heavy construction companies here. Each one of them have about 5 to 6 projects. Those projects can be from 100 to 244 blocks. They're at capacity. They're at capacity. So they're not bidding on any more work. They can't take on any more work. That's why we want to get out of wave 1 and 2. The other issue is when they bid these contracts in 1 or 2 years ago at those prices, as you know, those prices are not the same today. So for them to move forward and not lose money or go out of business, what we have to do on our end is we're negotiating sometimes with bond money to make up that difference that we can't make up because they put in their actual bid tabs, and state public bid law won't let us go over that. So it's a balancing act, and that's why I say I took a delay. We did had a new company come in town, Murphy Pipe, I
Murphy
think,
Pipe.
that bid on one of our contracts. But I've had companies tell me, hey, Joe, I didn't bid, I'm at capacity. Or I'm building in my risk on my bid because the market is so much risk in the market right now. I have to put that risk in the bids. The bids are coming in too high, and a lot of times I won't award them because they're 300% over, and I'll be robbing Peter to pay Paul on some of the future
Then
projects.
I'll go back to Council Member Harris's efforts to try to get us to take a look at minimal impact
Mhm.
and incremental change and progress, okay? So and that's what you guys are doing now, right? So credit that. So if we're using that model, council member, then why are we not training, especially DBEs and smaller companies? If we're going to be using medium impact, incremental change, why are we not ramping up? Maybe that may not be ready for the now, but maybe they'll be more ready than they weren't ready 4 or 5 years ago when these issues were passed. So it's actually, to me, an opportunity so that smaller companies can be tooled and ramped up, especially smaller local and DBs and minority companies, if we're going to focus on incremental change to begin to impact the work moving forward. And so that means us being proactive, right, with smaller companies that we can help develop capacity, get bonding capability, and also some of these apprenticeship programs.
Right, and I agree with you. For example, I brought in a construction company, DBE, that's doing a lot of the sidewalk, street construction right now, asphalt. And I had a conversation with the owner of the company, and I asked him just that. You've got a lot of capacity right now. Sometimes it might hold up our project. Why aren't you bringing in another DBE, either in trucking, asphalt, concrete work or whatever to support you? So we are looking at, and I'm recommending, sometimes enforcing, that we, grow DBEs. I talked to someone yesterday, a big, large firm, and told them, hey, this company just didn't wake up and was a prime 18,000 personnel company. You started in a garage one day. So I'm looking for that. I think Supply Diversity is working on a mentor protege package to get in front of council. So, it's a priority for me.
Well, let me say, and thank you guys for your efforts in being proactive. I don't think the majority of this council, anyone on this council will be happy. We'll pat you on your back when this work is finally completed. And there isn't a hardship anymore about capital projects. But I think many of us will be extremely disappointed if that when we pat you on the back about completing these projects, it hasn't impacted the majority of the citizens here economically.
Right.
That the African-American community and business community hasn't been impacted positively in a positive way. Because the one thing we know about COVID and reset, supply distribution change, and shutdown, that gives us an opportunity to help people prepare themselves so that they can have an economic impact on the community that needs it the most.
Mhm.
If a third of this population continues to be at or below the poverty level, if the per capita economic statistics for the Black community here, if that gap continues to be wider, 10% wider than it was pre-Katrina, with billions of dollars coming here, then we may be successful at pouring some concrete, but we're unsuccessful at creating some economic and social stability for the majority of the city.
Mhm.
So that's a win and a loss. And when you talk about crime, education, and families, when you lose in that area, the loss overshadows the win.
Mhm.
And I agree with you. And that's one of the reasons we had our matchmaking.
And these out-of-town contractors,
Right,
they ain't no solution because they was here after Katrina.
right.
And I'm not saying they don't have a purpose,
Mhm.
but they should have a purpose, being purposefully working with local firms and minority local firms.
And they still have the same 35% mandate. So for working with local firms.
Okay.
Yeah, and we worked, like I say, Councilmember Thomas, I've got it. That's why we had the matchmaking project and session at the convention center to match those DBEs and all those different capacities to the prime construction company.
You guys, look, and first of all, got to give you credit. On top of the mess that you've inherited, you're doing everything, and I see some things we're talking about being implemented in your plan, right? That's a good thing. But I think what we want to see is that it actually impacts the area that's being affected, period. And if we're doing the work now, then we don't have to say, I'm tired of hearing what we were supposed to do, what we want to do. We're gonna do the moon. Okay, well, we ain't did the moon yet, right? We're gonna do this. Well, we haven't done it yet. And I think what we're looking for is that not only were we planning to gonna do it, we can begin to see those incremental efforts to do it. Councilmember Harris.
Thank you. I just have two comments on the DBE issue, Councilmember Thomas. Listen, in the Central City project, there's a great DBE working for Fleming that's literally turning out the sidewalks like that. A block over on First, there's no progress to complete the project. And I think it's a different sub and a different prime. So how are we awarding the DBs that are actually getting the work done? I mean, I think that's part of this discussion when we talk about DBs, high performing DBs that are actually turning out work and results, and seeing that and awarding them contracts or pushing them, the primes, to award those contracts to that DBE without overwhelming them, of course.
Well, I mean, like the construction company I brought up to you, C&M. I mean, every construction company is using C&M, and that's why I encourage them to bring other DBs on them to make the work. Now, I know what you're going to say, council member. Some of the reason I've asked the same question is like, why aren't you using other DBEs? And the answer has been the type of equipment that they have, that they can do the work crews they've got. But I've sat down with supplier diversity, and council member, they're out at the site with me. And I would encourage any DBE that's in concrete work, asphalt, has the machinery, has the expertise to do this work. The work is there. We just need them to connect, with the prime contractors. I can do a lot, but I can't do everything. It's some things the DBE have to do themselves as far as business development. They have to get with those primes and give them their capability, so they can get subcontracts and do the work. We got plenty of work to go around for everybody right now.
But ultimately, and we talked about this in the field, it's ultimately the prime's responsibility to get these projects done no matter what.
No matter what.
So for the delay on First Street, which is substantially complete, but for the sidewalks, the prime should either step in and complete it or provide additional capital or equipment or people to the DBE so that they can complete the contract.
Right. Some of the primes are doing it. Some of the primes are not.
Well, you let me know which are not that are working
Some are
in
not.
my district.
And some of the DBEs, I mean, to be truthful, are not doing quality work. So that's the balance act. But we'll continue to go back out in the field and find the problems. But, if the DBEs are listening to me that are in construction, there's plenty of work out there. If they need me to work and be the in-between to put them together with a prime contractor, I'll do that also. They just need to reach out to me and let me know what's going on.
Eugene FTE Green, council member, listen, we need to put this out that DBEs need to apply. One last comment. Pritchard and Broadway is the community center that is being impacted. Literally, they're telling me that, and I think we talked about this, Sarah, that it's a senior center, so people are in wheelchairs and aren't able to get to this community center.
Okay.
There was an ambulance that couldn't get down the street and was going the wrong way and trying to get to people. So, I mean, this is really impacting people's health and safety, to Councilmember Thomas's point. So when we can get a walkthrough around there, let's just do it, and we can see what we can do to speed up this construction.
Okay, I'll try to get you an update on that today. And I know Councilmember King stepped out, but I did get an update from my team on the 900 block of Clouet. They're repairing the leak today. Oh, here he comes. I was just updating you.
Talking about
900 block of
Cluey.
Cluey. So they're repairing the leak today and they're going to be paving on Monday, weather permitting.
Thank you.
So making some progress.
Councilmember Green,
Did you all hear that French speaker say Cloué?
Cluey.
It is Cloué.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I know
Cluey.
it's Cloué, right? But it is Cloué too. But okay, look, I guess this is the last question, so I kind of want to close out with something that we've closed.
Your
out
last
before.
question.
Last question. Can we get somebody to go around and get all those orange cones and barricade from completed jobs? There's a guy who's off AP Turo who collects them. And if you drive on, I think it's North Tonti or North Rocheblave Street, he's collected them from jobs because they've been sitting for so long. I don't know what he does with them, but we've actually filed a concern. I won't say a complaint because he's actually removing them from the street. So on a positive or a lighter note, go get those orange cones and barricades from those finished
That's the
jobs.
biggest hustle in the city. Whoever
Are we buying them back? That's what
whoever
I want
has
to
the
know.
cone, whoever has the cone contract for the city and sewage and water board, whoever supplies those cones, I thought they were reusable, right? But I know there's some cones on the corner of Yardley and Wright that have been sitting there for a year and a half. Entergy left some cones on Crowder by the service road. So we ought to start developing some local DBE cone collectors and whatever collecting something.
storage.
You know it?
Well, we filed a concern. I don't want to say a complaint because a guy has picked them up from finished jobs,
Okay.
but it's clearly right in front of his house. Somebody would see it.
Well, who collects the cones and barrels anyway?
So if it's a project, they would belong to the contractor. And so they should be picking up that material.
They're not.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're not. Hey guys,
But we'll look at those locations.
yeah.
So I'm
yeah.
surprised. I don't know if they know that. I've talked to a contractor before. They don't buy them. They get them from the city, right?
No.
All of the
Not all
orange
of them.
cones are consistent. So every
DP
contractor gets those orange cones.
So it depends. If it's DPW maintenance, obviously we have our own cones,
Right.
barricades,
Yeah.
for issues that the city's addressing, but in project areas, the contractors
Contract.
provide those.
Okay.
They belong to the contractor.
All right, let's give an example. AP Turo then, since we said that, you're saying that it's just consistent. Is the case that every contractor happens to have the same orange cones, or is that meeting a city requirement that they be orange? Orange and white. All of these cones are orange and white. I could take you to about 7 locations where they're finished and there's an orange and white code somewhere, somewhere near. It kind of started off humorous, but I didn't know that
Yeah.
if that's the case, that seems interesting that every contractor has an orange and white cone.
Mhm.
I mean, because you could have red and white, you could have green and white.
Mhm.
They're not buying those from the city.
It's collusion.
No.
No. No, they're not buying them from the city.
So your specs will say that, for example, when a excavation job has begun, it's up to them to
That's
put
part
the
of their
number-
mobile.
Yeah, but they have,
Mobile
if they put up there are certain kinds of barricades per our specifications that they have to use.
And it's up to them to come back and remove them.
Yes.
Yes.
And we get, Roadwork NOLA gets calls all the time about materials cones that have been left in completed areas. And we have to get the contractors to come and collect them.
I'll tell anybody, I learn things every day. I actually didn't know that Bayou St. John filled up from the lake and that if you didn't close the valve, it would overflow. So look, so I'll tell you, that's an interesting fact to know because example, in yesterday's Gardena pre-construction meeting, I'll mention that to the contractor when I go. I ask somebody from neighborhood engagement to even just mention to them, please be sure to take your cones at the end of the job.
Mhm.
I don't know if I think that they all know that. But okay.
Yeah, and I believe it's just an industry standard and, probably everybody's using the same supplier. to get those.
And council member, the lake flows in and our water flows out. If not for valves,
I know, but
if not for valves and drainage,
We'd be in big trouble.
we wouldn't be right here. We'd have to be closer to the river.
no, I just want to clarify what I know. I know that there are valves at the corner, but I didn't know that the relief is Sewage and Water Board who opens up a valve at the end of Bayou St. John. So congratulations on that being done.
Yeah.
But you learn things every day. I would have thought that there was some closer or fail-safe mechanism that didn't require the bayou to get filled before the Sewage and Water Board stepped in. So,
Our water and management system was #1 in the world. We taught the Australians, the Dutch, and many nations around this country. Where we fell behind, they took our models and moved forward. So now the challenge is on us to catch up.
And we're gonna talk to, I'm reaching out to the Southeast Louisiana Flood Protection Authority. We just think, I'm sure Grace is here, Sewer and Water Board, we need notification. When they're gonna push water into
Right.
the Bayou St. John, just give us a couple days so I can have DPW crews. We're making sure the catch basins were open, anything in case we had overtopping. I just need a couple of days, and I'm sure Sewer and Water Board needs the same respect.
okay.
Ms. Karen Kirsten.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, Joe.
Ms. Karen?
Before I begin, I just want to extend a personal comment to Councilmember Thomas. You know me, you've known me for years. My thoughts are with you and your family.
Thank
We've
you.
been there.
Thank
It's a
you.
difficult time.
Thank
Take
you
care.
very much.
Last month, I came to y'all and talked about the ongoing problems in my neighborhood, which is the 4200 block of Vincennes and the 4300 block of State Street Drive. We continue to have an ongoing disrespect, disruptive, destructive, questionable work going on in those two blocks. In our block alone, instead of a one and done method, these guys have dug up the street, not one, not two, but now 4 times. The waste of sand, the waste of gravel, the waste of time, and the destruction is beyond what I can say in these 2 minutes. Yesterday and last Friday, they uncovered a water line, which I might add has been broken for 2 freaking years, but they decided now to fix it and discovered that all the new work that they had done is now intersecting incorrectly with the old water line. So now the water line zigzags across the street, back around, up and over the other work that they had done to tie into the water line. And then they wrap this new water line with plastic bags and painter's tape. And as I had said in my email, there's an entire industry devoted to appropriate materials, but these guys are doing all kind of crazy stuff. I don't know if the workers are truly just determined to stick it to us and make trouble, or whether they're not getting the right management and the right informations and the right training to do their jobs. But the neighborhood is beyond frustrated. We need help. We need answers. And this is just one example. On State Street Drive, they forgot to put in the catch basins. And it wasn't until I contacted Joe's office and some other people and said, where the heck are the catch basins, that they stopped the paving work and put in the vault. They're putting the vaults in as of this morning. I'm glad to do it as my civic duty, but really, folks, we need some help and some answers.
But thank you. We'll I think many of us remember the news report
Mhm.
about the work on Napoleon when they paved over the drainage.
Right, right.
And I thought I'd asked these conversations, what the companies that work here, did they think less of our projects? In many cases, as we drive around and take pictures, it's almost like they come here to make money, but there's a level of disrespect in our community. And I think we need to start rating and calling out those companies, right? The ones that don't do the work
Mhm.
on time, on budget, and with quality. They should be posted here. They should be posted here at these meetings. The public needs to know.
Mhm.
Maybe you can't stop them from bidding, but maybe we can find a way through the process to say that, no, they did shoddy work, right? They don't respect New Orleans people. They don't respect our infrastructure, because sometimes it looks like that. And they shouldn't be rewarded for getting paid millions and millions of dollars to mess up communities. Period. If you don't want to take pride in working in New Orleans, okay, just go bid somewhere else.
Exactly. And I'm pushing hard right now. Thanks, Ms.
All right.
Karen.
Well,
for
and thank
coming
you. I
to talk.
appreciate the chance to
Thank
talk to
you.
everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
I am pushing hard. One thing that I didn't feel was in place when I took over was performance reviews. And I'm pushing right now for my project managers to to make sure that they, just like Ms. Karen said, to put those performance reviews in the file. State public bid law says that we have to accept the lowest bid, but when we have performance reviews that are submitted and pushed to the purchasing office, we cannot award if the past performance is not up to quality.
Thank you.
So that's what we're pushing real hard right now, like Ms. Karen was talked about. Some of our contractors are doing great work. Some of our DBEs are, but it's some that are not doing great
Well,
work.
let's let this committee know and the public know who is and who's not.
Mhm.
If I could just add, so we do have a public facing view so that people can take a look at what those
Okay.
ratings are. They're done on a monthly basis. It's tied in with the invoicing process.
It
and
would
is
have a
up on
much
the
more
road.
profound impact here on the board.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
so maybe we'll have a special meeting on that. Who's good and who ain't?
Mhm.
All right. Any online comments?
Yes, sir. We have two. First comment is from Val Coopit, who says, number one, are our vendors being paid timely and appropriately? Number two, why is all the city of New Orleans dump trucks not operatable for use for the alley grade fill to be delivered to our request for alley grade fill? Brad Odd comments, thank you for the opportunity to make a public comment regarding City of New Orleans roadwork activities. Given the truly ill-conceived recent passage of ordinance calendar number 33-854, which proposes to force the Department of Public Works to undo complete street safety infrastructure along two major Algiers thoroughfares, please eliminate how much such an infrastructure removal will cost and what future roadwork activities in Algiers will be impacted due to this unfortunate forced expenditure. And that's it for the public comments.
Thank you. There being no other comments from the council. Thank y'all for y'all presentation, guys, and appreciate y'all time spent. Ms. Robles, thank you for especially a lot of the stuff you're doing to try to move into these capital projects. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda.
Next item is a discussion of the resolution regarding the preliminary approval of the $45 million drainage system limited tax bonds. The presenter is our bond counsel.
Bond council. You can start your presentation when you're ready.
Sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and council members. Jason Akers with Foley and Udell Bond Counsel with me.
Maria Ozen and Associates.
We serve as bond counsel to the Board of Liquidation. The request, though, is for drainage tax drainage system limited tax bonds for the Sewage and Water Board. As you know, Board of Liquidation issues those bonds in the name of the city for the Sewage and Water Board. The request is for not exceeding $45 million, term not later than December 1 of 2028, and for a maximum interest rate of 5%. This is coming to the committee as part of the preliminary approval process. Has been approved by Sewage and Water Board, has been approved by the Board of Liquidation. With your approval, we are making application to the State Bond Commission. They will approve in October. Then we'll move to the sale of the bonds. That process is dictated by the Board of Liquidation, and it'll come back to you for a final approval sometime later in November. We just kind of hit the high points of the request. And then with this back here is Gray Lewis from Sewage and Water Board. So if there's specific questions that we can't answer, we'll ask him to come along if that works for you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Sure. So as we mentioned, these are bonds that are secured by one of the three taxes that are levied to support the drainage system in the city of New Orleans. This is specifically referred to as the 9 mil tax, although it's levied at a rate of 7.06 mils. It is producing a significant amount of revenue each year to actually fund and support this debt service. In fact, there's one issue of bonds that's outstanding that is secured by this tax that pays off December 1 of this year. That's going to free up an amount of capacity that this will take place of. The short term of December 28th is because the financial advisors for the Board of Liquidation and the Sewage and Water Board have run an operational capacity analysis that determines that the operations of the Sewage and Water Board for the drainage are not going to be impacted negatively because of the additional debt service that's required as part of this $45 million. I want to be very clear on that. We're utilizing the short term because one of the taxes expires in 2028, not the one that we're using to secure the bonds, but one of the taxes expires in 2028. So we want to ensure that should that tax expire and not be not be renewed, that this borrowing doesn't impact the operational capacity of the drainage system. The purpose of the bonds is written very broadly. And I know Councilmember Jeruso and I have had a conversation about this. So I want to be clear on it. It's written very broadly for any purpose related to the drainage system, but make no mistake, this is intended for the West Power Complex. There is a funding gap of approximately $40 to $45 million from all the sources that are currently available. This will fill that funding gap. And specifically will be used for procurement of part of the equipment and for the underground stabilization, underground cabling, et cetera. This is my history major attempt to explain exactly what goes on with the construction of a West Power Complex. But it will be used specifically for those particular procurements and then constructions that will be all part of the entire complex as a whole. So the reason for us wording it broadly is because in case, for example, either funds are left over after the completion of the project, based on what you just heard from Joe and his team, that doesn't really seem likely with the way that bids are coming in these days. Or should reason exist to reprioritize for one reason or another, perhaps additional funding becomes available for the West Power Complex, or we have a need for drainage, emergency type drainage repairs. These funds could be used for that purpose as well. So our job is to provide that flexibility, although Sewage and Water Board will tell you and has said at multiple meetings that this will be used for the West Power Complex. Anything that we should add, Maria?
No, I think you covered it all.
Okay, well, we're happy to answer any questions for you as well.
Councilmember Jeruso.
I'm sorry, Jason. As you did your excellent recitation, I just realized I had one question. So the securitization for the bonds is the drainage millages?
Only one of the millages will secure the bonds, the one that we call the 9 mil tax.
Okay.
Even though it's not levied at 9 mils, it's still called the 9 mil tax.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Any
Mr.
comments
Chair.
from other council members? Anything you guys want to close with?
No, just want to thank you very much for the opportunity. And as I mentioned, we'll be back before you in another couple of months with the results of the sale.
Some positive bond stuff.
Yeah, Councilman Thomas.
You have a question that you didn't have to ask?
Yep. I didn't have to ask. You're right.
Councilmember
I
Green.
didn't have to ask. But for the
Councilmember
public,
Green.
I want to commend the city council for its commitment to drainage and sewage and other issues. A lot of times these sort of developments don't get mentioned in the public light, but there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, including what we're seeing now here. And I just want to remind the public that one of the top priorities of this council, as we saw recently, is to provide, separate from politics, services to our citizens that help keep them safe and also help keep our property values as they should be. So this is a good move in that direction. I just want to emphasize to the public my appreciation for being on the city council at this time, with a city council that's committed to making sure our citizens stay safe.
Well, the two people before you probably represent some of the foremost authorities in this area. Have been working on this for quite a long time and have been trained by some of the best in this business. So we're getting great representation in that area. Thank you all. Any online comments? No online comments?
So
Councilmember Green, Councilmember Green, this has nothing to do with the valves on Lake Pontchartrain, okay?
I'm just glad that the Sewage and Water Board is there to let the water go into the Lafitte Greenway. Okay.
Councilmember Harris just added a whole new thing to Robert's Rules of Orders and ending meetings. She didn't say adjourn, she said done. Motion to be done. Moved by Councilmember Harris, seconded by Councilmember Green. All in favor? Thank y'all, guys. Y'all have a good one.
Thank you.
And I want to thank everybody for the blessings and the best condolences and best wishes.